Well, welcome in today, everybody. I'm Adrian Card with Colorado State University Extension. I'm the state produce specialist and your host today for our Lunch and Learn webinar, Understanding and Complying with Hand Weeding Variants from the Ag Labor Rights and Responsibilities Act, the Senate Bill 2187. Today's event is part of a series of labor-oriented spring labor series of webinars. Our next up is going to be, and I'll put this in the chat for you all later, Thursday, April the 9th, we'll have another labor-oriented webinar, Ensuring Heat-Related Illness Prevention Practices for Employees and ALRRA Heat Safety Precaution Compliance. So look for that. We'll advertise that on CFPGA emails and through some of my email channels as well. Today's webinar is going to explain key compliance information from the 2021 Colorado Law Ag Labor Rights and Responsibilities Act, the hand weeding variance component of that. And before I introduce our presenter, CFPGA is the go-to resource for Colorado's fresh fruit and vegetable farmers. We connect Colorado growers with industry, government, and academia and consumers to strengthen and expand Colorado fresh fruit and vegetable production. Learn more at coloradoproduce.org and on facebook.com/CFPGA. You've probably all been in Zoom webinars. There is a Q&A box you'll find in your toolbar, and you will be able to see all of the questions asked in there, so you can know if they're duplicate. You won't duplicate questions if you take a look in there and see who's asked. Feel free to populate that as we go. We'll answer questions at the end. You're going to see two polls, one at the beginning, one at the end too. And this recording is going to get posted to CFPGA's labor page through its YouTube channel, and I'll post those links in the chat for you as well, so you have that as a reference. Our presenter today is Mark Gallegos. He's the Director of Inspection and Consumer Services Division in Colorado Department of Agriculture. And before I pass over to Mark, I'm going to launch a poll and just see what we can understand about those who are attending today. And if you're a producer, what do you produce? You'll see this on screen. Select all that apply. And a little tip for us today, if you have things that you want to learn, you can type that in your polling box as well. And I'll show these responses to you here in just a second. We'll at least get to see the crops being produced. So, okay, great. Coming on in here, looking good. Okay. Here's what we have. We have 3 vegetable producers, 1 other with crop requiring hand weeding. And these learning components are trickier for me to pull out. I forgot that part. So I will, here we go. What do you hope to learn today? Low cost access to recommended tools, any changes to the hand reading variants, things of that nature. So Mark, with that, would love to pass over to you.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. As Adrian stated, my name is Mark Gallegos. I am the Division Director at the Colorado Department of Agriculture in the Inspection and Consumer Services Division. And I will be sharing a presentation today regarding hand weeding variants and the requirements around it. And so let me share my screen really quick with everybody, and we'll get started. And Adrian, if there's any issues or anything, feel free to let me know and I'll get started here. So can you see my screen okay, Adrian?
Looks great, looks great.
All right. So as Adrian stated, we're gonna hopefully give a good presentation on the understanding and complying with the hand weeding variants. And so with that, there's a few things I wanna review with everybody. Some of this, many of you probably have already heard or may be aware of, but I just kind of wanna reinforce several of the components of the hand weeding variance requirements. So I wanna start with the Colorado requirements, just a high-level overview. Then I want to dive into Section 8, specifically 13.5 Part 2. That's the statutory requirements. And that is more in the Department of Labor and Employment. So we'll touch on that, but I'm not an expert on the Labor and Employment CDLE's requirements, but we will talk about it. And we'll also talk about the rule that the department established, the rules around the hand weeding requirements. Then I want to talk about the 7 exemptions. There are some exemptions. We want to touch on those. And then really important, I want to talk about what the rule does not do. I think there might be some misunderstandings. So I just want to make sure that we're clear what the rule does not do. and then touch on the variance procedures, and then end with the application. There's two different ways that you can apply for a variance. One is online using our portal that's on our website. And there's going to be a link to this in this presentation, which I've shared with Adrian, and he can share this or make it available to whoever would like to see it. And in addition to the online version of that, we'll talk about you can also download a copy of the application and mail it to us. So with that being said, let's talk about Colorado requirements. So the hand weeding variance, what is it? What it does is it restricts how farm workers can perform hand weeding. That's just a general overview of what this is about. Specifically, it limits hand weeding to 20% of the weekly work hours for an ag worker during that work week. And this is also known as occasional or intermittent. And so again, high level, what are the requirements and what does it require of an employer? It requires the employer to provide gloves, knee pads to each ag worker as necessary when they're engaging in the hand weeding or hand thinning. And that's one key component too. In addition to hand weeding, this does include hand thinning of plants. And every employer will provide any ag worker engaged in the hand weeding and hand thinning an additional 5-minute rest period in the middle of each work period. Again, these are some high-level points regarding the requirements, and there's some more nuances to this. Workers additionally must get a 15-minute rest break for every 4 hours they work, or for any major portion of 4 hours. The employer shall count the authorized rest period as hours worked. And there is an example that we always use. So if a worker works a 10-hour day, the worker is entitled to 3 15-minute rest periods, and they need to be spaced evenly throughout the day as much as practical. So like I stated earlier on, I want to talk about Section 8 of 13.5, and specifically it's Part 2 of the statute. And there's 4 key parts of this that I think it's important to know about and to at least have a basic understanding of it. And so I'll just go through the bullet points, and you can read the sections and the specific parts of the CRS. But primarily, these 4 are the most probably important ones to walk away with today. One is there's a prohibition on the use of a short-handled hoe as defined by statute. And that definition for a short-handled hoe means any handheld tool with a flat blade less than 18 inches long. So there's absolutely you cannot use that type of a tool. And it's important to know about occasional or intermittent. That means 20% or less of a worker's weekly work time. And then last, the performance of weeding and thinning by hand or with a short-handled tool is really strongly disfavored. And other short-handled tools that do not meet the definition are not prohibited. So there's 4 things right there that I think are really important to know about this requirement. One important thing to also know is the Department of Agriculture, when the regulations were established, we were tasked with the rulemaking to establish exemptions to the 20% threshold. And 2 of those requirements were for employees that were transitioning to certified organic for a period of up to 3 years. And we were also tasked with establishing a procedure for employers to seek a certificate of variance that would allow for more than the occasional or intermittent hand weeding. And so with that being said, and the reason this is important to note, we don't have any regulatory authority over the hand weeding component of the regulation, but we were tasked with drafting the rules on how to apply for a variance. And we were also tasked with providing that format. So we have an online option, and we also have that option to request a variance if you wanted to download and print and mail in an application. Once you do that, we'll review it and then issue a certificate. So one thing about the rules for hand weeding, the rule is limited to the procedure for acquiring a variance to the 20% threshold. And again, some of this is repetitive, but I think it's important to just kind of here are a couple different ways. That way, it just hopefully makes more sense and we clarify any misconceptions about the variance. And so what will you do when you apply for the variance? You'll really provide some very basic contact information. You'll provide an explanation as to why, to the best of your knowledge, it will not cause injury and can't be done with a long-handled tool. And this is right out of the statute. And then acknowledging that injury mitigation requirements in statute, you'll acknowledge that. I think it's through an attestation, and that you will provide gloves, knee pads, and additional brakes, and you will not use a short-handled hoe. So this is all in the application when you apply for the variance. And then you'll also be asked to describe any other procedures, methods, strategies to protect the workers from injury. That's another component of this part of the regulation is how do we prevent injury to the employees that are doing the hand weeding or thinning. So like I stated earlier, there are 7 exemptions to the 20% occasional or intermittent threshold. And first one, it's incidental to non-hand weeding operations. So it's not part of that particular function that incidental hand weeding is something that's like an assignment that they're doing that day, but it's just incidental to the operation. High density plants that are spaced less than 2 inches apart, that's also an exemption. Another important one to really know about is if you're an employer who is certified to meet the standards of the National Organic Program, that's an exemption. When the commodities are seedlings, and when the commodities are grown in tubs or planter containers, and seedings, plantings, transplantings, or harvesting by hand or with a hand tool, that's an exemption during those activities. And just tending to the soil that's the exposed area immediately around the commodities grown, using polyethylene or plastic mulch, does not apply to the soil between the rows. So those are the 7 exemptions that are in statute. So if you're meeting those exemptions, you wouldn't necessarily need to apply for the variance. So like I stated before, what does the rule not do? So one question we're always asked is, how much does this cost me? How much is this going to cost? And there is no fee to apply for a variance by the department. It does not require employees to list the current crop numbers and any business information around your crops. We don't want to, it's not that we don't want to know, but we don't gather that information to issue a certificate for the variance. It does not require additional record keeping. And what it really does not do, it does not allow the Department of Agriculture to conduct any sort of compliance inspection. So that's something that I really want to drive home is that we issue the variance certificate, but with that being said, we don't go out and we don't do inspections on your facilities and farms, and we don't verify whether or not you are needing a variance. We don't go out and send inspectors to look at any of that type of stuff. We just issue the variance. We don't do any compliance inspections. So some other key points to the variance. The variance is valid for 1 calendar year. That's what we have written in the rule. And it also allows for additional consecutive years for people who are transitioning to the organic process. So if you need additional time because of your transitioning, you can contact us. We can talk it through with you. I can't think of a good example right now, but there might be a time where maybe it's going to take an additional year for you to transition. We just need to, have a conversation with you. You can document that in your application, and then we will issue that variance to you. Okay, so really, why do you as an employer need the variance? You would need the variance anytime that you would require workers to hand weed or thin beyond the 20% of their work week. We understand that that is sometimes needed, and so that is one reason why you would need the variance. And then really at the end of the day, to ensure that you're in compliance with the statute requirements. And I say that because we know that the Department of Labor and Employment, they do have inspectors that do go out and verify certain parts of their regulations. And we've also been asked before by the Department of Labor and Employment to help an employer produce a copy of the variance that they applied for. So they are looking, they are asking. And so it's just important that if you're required to have the variance, I would highly encourage you to apply for that variance. So really, what are the procedures and the requirements? I know you can all read. I'll just touch on some really high points right here. But an agriculture employer, and this is right out of the rule. So an agriculture employer must receive a variance certificate from the CDA prior to having any worker weed or thin more than 20% of their their weekly work time on all the properties that are owned by the employer. And also, when determining whether a worker will hand weed greater than 20%, the employer must account for the hours performed hand weeding on the entirety of your operation, including time spent on portions of the properties where exempt activities occur. So if part of your property or your operation, you are transitioning to organic, and another part, you're conventional, you would want that cumulative time to be accounted for to determining that 20% of the workers' weekly work time. That's a mouthful. So if you have any questions, we can talk about that more after this presentation. But again, when you're applying, you want to take into account all of the properties, all the activities, and then determine, is that more than 20% of the work time? So on the application, there's some key pieces that I just want to highlight here. Each one of these bullet points, they are specific to the rule. And I will also have the rule listed in this presentation. So if you want to refer to it, you can see it and research that rule exactly. But they are the questions that we're going to ask, the name and the contact information for the person that's going to make the request for the variance. And then a short explanation or as much information as you want to give on why the variance is being requested. It could be, for example, the current times of the year, we're going to require, 25 to 40% of the work week will be engaged in thinning or hand weeding, as an example. A couple of other key things to really take note of. You'll be asked for an explanation of why, to the best of your knowledge as the employer, the hand weeding performed under the requested variance will not involve prolonged or unnecessary stooping, kneeling, or squatting. And to the best of your knowledge, again, does not create a risk for acute, chronic, or debilitating injuries. You'll be asked for an explanation of why, again, to the best of your knowledge, there's no suitable long-handled tool or other means of performing the work other than the hand weeding or thinning. You'll be asked to confirm that the hand weeding to be performed under the variance certificate is not hand weeding that can be performed under any exempt activity. Now that's in there, and I think that is just specific to if your operation is strictly, for example, transitioning to the organics program, that's already an exempt activity. So you wouldn't necessarily need to apply for the variance. However, with that being said, if 80% of your operation is transitioning to organic, but you still have 20% where hand weeding's being performed under conventional operation, then you would need to account for the entirety of that worker's week in performing hand weeding or thinning. Another thing to note is that we'll ask for confirmation that you as the employer will not have any worker use a short-handled hoe, because that is just a non-starter, that the use of a short-handled hoe for weeding and thinning is not allowed. A couple of other key components to know about. We'll ask for confirmation that you as the employer will provide the ag worker that's engaged in the hand weeding and hand thinning the additional 5 minutes rest period in the middle of each work period. And you'll also confirm that you will provide the gloves and knee pads as necessary, depending upon the specific task that's being done. And lastly, we'll ask for a description of any other procedures that are strategies, including but not limited to what other practices and weed management methods are being applied to the properties where the hand weeding, hand thinning is being performed on, and that you will what you will do to protect ag workers from the risk of, again, acute, chronic, or debilitating injury during the hand weeding or thinning that's being conducted on your operation. And then lastly, the last point that's in the rule is that we can ask for any other information required by the commissioner to administer this portion of the statute. At this point in time, there aren't any other requirements, just the bullet points that were listed above. So again, at this time, there's no additional requirements. So the application itself, again, it sounded like a lot in all those bullet points, a lot of the confirmations that are being asked for, a lot of the descriptions. Again, they don't have to be, like a page long. They can be just a clear description of what's happening when it's asking for an explanation, just so long as you can communicate the point to us that it's answering the question that's being asked. So again, you don't have to go into, providing us all sorts of research and everything. It's just to the best of your knowledge. If you can describe that to us, we'll read it. If we have any questions, we'll reach out to you. And then once we're done reviewing your application, we'll issue that certificate directly to you. You can download the paper application. There's going to be a link in this presentation, or you can just go right online, complete the application online, and then we will email you the certificate for the variance to the contact information that you provide us. Like I said, again, 10 minutes might be exaggerating. I don't think it's even 10 minutes to complete. We tried to make it as simple as possible, as clear as possible. So if you're going through it and you have questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk it through with you. Again, there's no fee to get a variance. We don't charge for this for providing the variance. And I really want to let you all know that any farm records that you might provide to us for whatever reason in regards to this process for the variance, your answers, how you responded, they're confidential. So we only share the variance if asked, that you applied, your farm has a variance, and that's all the information that we provide. And that's the end of my presentation. So thank you. I know that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to email me, here's my contact information, and I'm happy to take the time to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mark. I'm looking at the Q&A box. I don't see any that have come in yet, but just a couple I thought of just to underscore the content in your presentation. If it's a plastic mulch area, and I have bindweed coming up next to in the plastic holes where the plant is growing, that's okay to do as part of this variance, but the space that's outside between the plastic sheets in the field, that wider space is not okay.
Yeah, and that's a good way of stating it, Adrian. It's specific to where the hand weeding activity is taking place. So if it's incidental, if you're going through the field and you're pulling that occasional bindweed's a good example because that stuff appears overnight. If you're pulling that, then yeah, it's where it's located, and really I think of it as the task for the day, or what are you really out there doing? And if it's that intermittent, occasional, then that I wouldn't really say that you would really need to consider that a part of the hand weeding operation or duty for the day.
Okay. And that these can't be issued retroactively. They must be done before workers start to engage in more than 20% of their work week in these types of hand weeding intensive tasks.
That's correct. We do ask that give us as much time as possible. We try to turn these around almost same day as we get them. That doesn't always happen, but if you know that you're going to be needing this variance, even if you think you might need the variance, I would recommend that you at least 10 days prior, if you can, request the variance, complete the application so that we can get that certificate to you. But you're correct. We really can't issue these retroactively.
And if a producer does this, it's good for all of the ground that they that they would use in that season, ground that they would own or lease or and lease?
Yes, it would be all the properties that or ground that is under control of that producer. So it's leased land, it's land that they own, any part of the property where they have control or any properties they have control over and they have employees doing work on. And the variance is good for a year. So if you apply, you'll have a variance for all of 26.
Okay, great. And remind our attendees, invite you to type in your questions into the Q&A portion of your Zoom toolbar. At the bottom of it, you should be able to mouse over it and see a Q&A button. Type in there. Everybody can see everybody's questions, so you'll know and not duplicate questions. And you can ask them anonymously if you want to. And you underscored, although that there are several different criteria that the application instrument will ask and gather information on, how it's not going to cause, why it's not prolonged work, why it's not going to cause injury, how you will protect workers from injury doing this. Mark, I'm hearing you say that it doesn't need to be white paper submitted around this. It can be, fairly brief to explain those questions.
Exactly. We just more than anything need to know that you're aware that this is intending to prevent any debilitating injuries to the employees doing this type of work. So when you're applying for that variance, as you're answering the questions, they don't need, like you, that's a good point, Adrian. It does not need to be a white paper. You don't have to have supporting documentations from, 10 different studies to support your stance or request. We just need to know that you are reading the question, you understand the requirement, and you're going to just give us an explanation of why to the best of your knowledge. And if we have, we'll reach out. We'll talk it through with you and have a good understanding of what you're trying to convey to us.
And that's the most important part, I think, about this is that you're going to work in a educational manner around this and try to help people understand how to comply with it.
Absolutely. And I can say as of today, we've never denied a request for a variance. Mm-hmm. Every request that we've received, we reviewed it and we've granted the certificate of variance. So it's not like it's something that we're asking the questions we're required to ask. The producers who have applied, they've done an excellent job providing, excellent responses back. And to date, we've never denied any request for variance.
And clearly the law intended to help protect worker ergonomics body, just overexposure to repetitive and stooped labor types of injuries. So that is a very important part of this. And the short-handled hoe, I remember the definition, that is a handle with a metal blade, and the whole thing is equal to or shorter than 18 inches, right?
That's correct. If it fits that definition, that's not allowed. Yeah. Or even if you take a long-handled hoe and converted it to those dimensions, that would not be allowed. So at the end of the day, if it's that single blade perpendicular to the handle, 18 inches or less, that would be considered a short-handled hoe and not allowed.
Which can cause repetitive injury issues.
Exactly.
Well, I'm still looking at the Q&A box. I don't see any coming in, and we'll just share the results. Looks like we had great educational outcomes here, and we'll ask one final time while we've got the expert in the house here. If you have any questions on how this process goes with the hand weeding variance, I think Marcus said importance to have this document on the ready should you get a visit from CDLE and they inquire, are you compliant on this part of ALRRA, the Ag Labor Rights and Responsibilities Act of 2021. So,
yeah.
Mark, anything else to share while we're here?
Yeah, I would just highly encourage all employers who even think they might need the variance, go ahead and apply for it. Complete it to the best of your knowledge, and we're happy to either issue that variance to you, or if we have additional questions, we'll reach out. But I think it's good to at least have in your back pocket, so to speak, just in case you need it, you'll have it and you won't have to worry about not having it.
Yeah, that's wise advice. Well, the recording today will be posted to CFEGA's labor page. I shared earlier in the chat. Hopefully, folks saw that as well. The YouTube page, where you'll see it go there first. If you're dying to see the recordings coming up, got to see them. They're going to hit YouTube first and then to the CFEGA website. So you may subscribe there and get notice of those. And with that, Mark, I want to thank you for making time to be with us today and sharing an important part of ALRRA and helping producers understand how to comply with that.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks everyone for being here today, and stay tuned for our April the 9th webinar on heat-related injury prevention. You will see emails going out about that as well, and wish everybody a great day. Thank you so much.